This is The High Road with author and registered psychotherapist, Dr. Marlene Bizub. Dr. Marlene speaks to the heart of people who need to be lifted up and get out of the muck and mire that often accompanies major life changes, such as divorce or separation. Dr. Marlene will aspire to help parents of divorce to love their children more than they hate their ex, and to learn to take the high road. So please welcome the host of The High Road, Dr. Marlene.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. Welcome, George.
Great to be with you again, Dr. Marlene, and good morning, at least in our time zone.
Yes, indeed. And we're coming up on the 4th of July, of course. And so it's kind of a fun time, actually, to talk about divorce and things like that, because I jokingly say that this is divorced people's, especially recently separated people's holiday, because it's Independence Day. And I kind of like that analogy, or whatever you want to call it. Um, but it is, somewhat symbolic. Of course, that's not what the holiday is about, but it is symbolic of the parents we work with and what they're going through, and embracing having that independence, looking for the positives, because there are positives. There's loss, but there are positives. And so I thought today we would talk about, last week we talked about things parents should not do or say, either in court or with their children or whatever, things that will basically shoot themselves in the foot. And I thought today we would turn that around and do the opposite and talk about things for parents to say, things they should say or do, both again in court and with their children or with other people or whatever. So I don't know, is there anything that comes to mind with you that you can think of that parents maybe should not do, especially in court? You're the one to speak to in court, so
Well, I
anything
would
come to mind? Mhm.
absolutely, I would break that down into the client's behavior toward the judge, toward
Mm,
opposing counsel, toward their own counsel, and their behavior generally at counsel table. So I would break that down into several pieces, and I would start out by indicating to the client that if the judge gives them an instruction to answer a question or how to behave or not behave, they need to comply with that instruction right away. That would be
mhm.
the first thing I would say. So you're going to show respect to the judge, whether you disagree. Don't argue with the judge if the judge is making a pronouncement or an order or an instruction of some kind. So that would be my first thing, would be how to interact and show respect to the judge. And
Okay, so appropriate decorum in court.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
then a big one is how to respond to opposing counsel, particularly in cross-examination. And so you don't argue with the other attorney. Don't try to be snide or sarcastic. Just answer the
Mhm.
question and no more. Don't volunteer any information over and above the answer to the question. Uh, so you show respect to the opposing counsel, whether you think they're horrible or not.
Right.
And that would be the next thing. Another problem that I think people sometimes encounter or bring on themselves is their behavior at counsel table. They gesture wildly, or they're speaking too loudly to their attorney, trying to whisper something to them, but they're not whispering,
Right.
uh, and so forth. So I would start there by describing appropriate behaviors toward each of the players, if you will, in the hearing.
Okay. Well, and to your point about their response to opposing counsel, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it a tactic of both attorneys usually to try to kind of provoke the other parent? And especially like if you know that they historically have an anger problem or something like that, to say something, poke them to make them show their anger or respond in a negative way. Isn't that an attorney tactic?
Certainly is. We poke the bear and
Yes.
hope for a response to show how much temper someone has,
Hmm.
how they're not moderated in their emotions. And we would certainly do that. We're not above that.
Right, right. And, I wouldn't even put it that way by saying, we're not above that. I mean, some people might view it that way. But to me, court should be exposing things that the court needs to see to protect the children. It's not about these two parents. I mean, we don't want bad things to happen to the parents either, but it's protecting the children. And if you can provoke someone and prod them enough that they blow up or um, respond sharply or sarcastically or however they show themselves, I think that's kind of what the court needs to see, to be honest.
Well, that's true, and after uh, discussing the behavior toward the various personnel in the hearing, I would then go over with the client, of course, in advance, the types of questions that they're likely to hear, the types of questions they're going to get from me, and that depends on the issues in the case. So
Hmm.
it's difficult to give an answer which is generally applicable, but one that I think is very important is that on the stand, the client demonstrates recognition of the need for both parents in the children's lives.
Yes.
I think that is critical, and that would be a generally
A
applicable
do.
statement.
Yes, yes, that's a do. Yes,
Yeah,
do
absolutely.
do show that, yes. Because we talk frequently about the best interest of the child statute, which in Colorado, for anyone who wants to look it up, it's 1410-124 CRS 1410-124. But one of the items in there is each parent's ability to foster, you can say this better than I can, but foster the sharing of love, affection, and time spent, I believe is the way it's worded, with the other parent. And I think that's huge. If you can show that somehow in your testimony, that's a do for sure.
Yeah, and if there's been, for example, a parental responsibility evaluation, uh, kind of focusing on things that you agree with or disagree with in the evaluation, and be prepared to explain why one disagrees or agrees with aspects of the parental responsibility evaluation. So, showing the ability to foster or encourage the sharing of love, affection, and contact is the way I say it
Okay.
with the other parent is very important. Showing a willingness to subordinate one's own needs and desires and habits to what's best for the children. That is very important to demonstrate in one's testimony as well.
Yes. Yes. And those are important things for the court to hear, and I think sometimes people just aren't prepped well. And so they make some mistakes, and looking back later, they're like, I don't know why I said that, or I don't know why I didn't say this, or whatever. But court can really be a place where you're building the court's view of you as well as your ex's view of you. Instead of just tearing each other down, you can show the whole world what a civil and decent person you can be and how you can focus on the needs of your children. But too often we go in angry and defensive, and especially cross examination. I mean, I don't know anything worse, and you know it's coming, you know, you know it's coming. Because I'm
Well,
kind of in that position in cases if I'm more on one, and I'm not on anyone's side, but if it's perceived that I'm more on one party's side, when that other attorney gets ready to question me, I brace myself to an extent, so I know these parents do.
well, a good stiff drink before court is not advised.
No, 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 but a little anticipation, or like what you do with your clients, going to the courtroom and practicing. There's a lot to be said for just rehearsing and seeing the environment and things like that.
Yeah, there's no question about it, and certainly it's difficult for some people, I think, to hide their demeanor. And
Yes.
I have to tell them, above all, keep your cool when you're on the witness
Yes.
stand. Don't
Yeah.
get frazzled. If you don't know or you don't remember, it's okay to say so.
Yeah.
And those are simple things, but a lot of times clients said they express if they're not prepared, they express fear and concern. I don't know what to say. I didn't know whether to say I don't remember. And I tell them it's perfectly all right to say I don't remember or I don't
Hmm.
know. That's the
Hmm.
case.
Right. Right. But if they can weave into their testimony positive things about the other parent, or like you said, show their desire to have the kids spend time with both parents, making statements like, I believe our kids need both of us, things like that. That goes a long way, I think.
There's no question about it, and the acknowledgement that the children need both parents, and both parents have a role to play in their lives on the stand is very important, and it
Yes.
demonstrates that ability to encourage the sharing of love, affection, and contact, and to prioritize the needs of the children. And so, what you have taught us, I think, over many shows, is that the the parents have a lot of loss going through divorce. They're upset, they're angry, they're feel violated, uh, and they will lose some things. Typically, be some loss of property and finances and so forth. Um, but it's again potentially a court of loss.
Hmm.
And again, we have to be delicate in saying, I'm willing and able to fight for you. However, that doesn't mean I'm not going to encourage you to seek an alternative track to litigation to resolving parental issues. And so what you have taught us is that parents who are dickering over their children and fighting about their children, making the children the conflict focus, um, the parents are going to encounter another loss in the future, and that may be their relationship with their children because the child
Yes.
is trying to get away from that parental conflict. So there's another
Yes.
potential cost long term of fighting and making the children the focal point of conflict. And we've learned that from you, and
Oh,
I
well, thank
appreciate
you.
it.
From us, from us. Well, and to that point, um, the aspect of this that is most harmful to children, the aspect of separation and divorce that is most harmful, is exposure to their parents' conflict. As you just adeptly said, kids don't want to hear that. They don't want to be in the middle of it. They don't want to be exposed to it. And they shouldn't have to be. And I always say the greatest gift we can give our kids is permission to love both parents. And if you can just avoid fighting with the other parent in front of your children, they don't want to hear it. They truly don't. And just giving them that permission to love the other parent and the respect of not being exposed to your conflict. Some parents feel like, suck it up and listen to it. It's where your mom and I or your dad and I are at. Well, that isn't their problem. They didn't ask for this. The conflict isn't between them or about them. Well, it might be about them, but it should not involve them. Let's put it that way. And so a do is to avoid fighting with the other parent and simply giving your children permission to love both of you.
Well, I think an aspirational standard would be not only giving them permission, but giving them the expectation that they would love
Yes,
and respect the other parent.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, that's good. That is
Yeah,
good.
I think that would be the aspirational standard that we would really seek after.
Yes, yes. Well, and some parents have a hard time holding their tongue about the other parent. And they especially do this when the kids are complaining about something. And let me tell the parents out there, if they haven't learned this already, your kids can complain about the other parent to you. You can't complain about the other parent. They will stop you in your tracks because they feel it's their right to complain about them, but not yours. And they will quickly put you in your place and say things like, well, you're not so easy to live with either, and things like that. And so we want to be careful with that. A good do is to just listen. You don't have to comment. You're providing validation for what they're saying by listening. And I mean, maintain eye contact, maybe nod if you want, but don't join in and say, oh, don't I know how angry your dad is, or, things like that. It's just not appropriate, and your kids will resent it. You'll find out that it hurts your relationship with them. It doesn't further damage the relationship between them and the other parent. It hurts your relationship with them. So parents really need to avoid doing that and just simply listen when the kids complain.
Well, and referencing court again, I mean, I would advise my client, this is not an opportunity for you to get on the stand and say everything you can think of that's bad about your ex.
Right,
That is
right.
not the right approach to the
No,
hearing.
no. And there are parents who do that. Like they
Um,
take every opportunity to say something negative about that other parent when they're testifying.
I think that's true, and so uh, some practice, not only in familiarization with the courtroom itself, but also the subject matter of the hearing, uh, some instruction to the client, and some preparation, especially if there is a, parental responsibility evaluation that someone is
Hmm.
either trying to support or oppose. Either way.
Hmm. Yes, yes. And parents don't realize too that right or wrong, what they say in court often will get back to the children. And so I think we have to be really careful, when we start bashing the other parent or sharing personal things in court. That's going to get back to your kids somehow.
And I don't see that part of it, but I would imagine it's not very constructive.
No, no. Needless to say, it is not. That will upset your kids quicker than anything to hear that you shared things about the other parent that just don't need to be publicly shared, you know?
Like
So,
snoring and things like that.
right? Our kids will tell us how they feel, and eventually they will. They might be afraid to at first, but eventually they will. Well, it's time to take a quick break, but we'll be back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. Before we went to break, we were talking about things that your kids will tell you about if you do it wrong. And those include speaking negatively about the other parent, saying things in court that somehow get back to your kids, because that will happen. You're going to have family members and friends and people like that in court. And they may not just go and directly tell your kids what was said, but they'll tell someone who will tell someone, and a kid will eventually overhear it. And, that's kind of how that stuff happens. They might hear it from friends, family members, grandma, whoever, but they'll overhear it, or someone eventually will mention something to the child. But often kids just overhear that stuff, because as much as we talk to parents about avoiding having the kids potentially hear them talk, we don't usually have the chance to tell that to friends and family members, extended family members like grandparents and aunts and uncles. And, they don't think about it and blurt something out. I've had people blurt something out and then say right then in the moment, oh, I shouldn't have said that in front of them, huh? It's
Well,
like,
I
no,
think
you shouldn't have. Yeah, go ahead.
one thing that comes to mind when thinking about embroiling the kids in the conflict that we don't want to do, or clients need to understand, sometimes they are very, very fervent in their desire to have their children testify or talk to the
Uh-huh.
judge. And when their counsel advises against that, it doesn't mean, oh, he or she is unwilling to fight for me. No, it means that he or she, through experience, knows that if you are the one trying to bring the child into the court process, you may be having that backfire on you, because the judge is going to be particularly uncomfortable, I guess, and maybe
Mhm.
suspicious of the parent who tries to bring a child into the process like that.
Right. Well, the judge is going to assume they've been prepped, or you wouldn't be so eager to have the child testify, which we don't do, or speak to the judge. And I had a kid this last week, I think he's 16 and a half, and he did go in and talk to the judge. And I believe that's like maybe the fourth or fifth time in 30 years that I've seen that happen. So it happens, but it's rare. And I think when a parent suggests it, in this case, the CLR threw it out there, and the judge jumped on it and said, yes, I'd like to talk to this kid. But when a parent suggests that, that tells the judge something too. And I think they're less inclined to talk to that kid if a parent suggests it.
Yes, and just for the viewers and listeners, CLR, the child's legal
Yes,
representative, and I feel strongly that the children need a voice, but they don't get a seat at the table. And one of the
right.
best ways for them to have a voice is through a mental health professional on the
Mhm.
case.
Yes, yes, I agree. Well, and even most CLRs who are typically attorneys, because it's a legal representative. So mental health people typically can't be a CLR. But even attorneys who are CLRs will say it's better for the kids to talk to a mental health professional because most CLRs will readily admit they don't know how to respond to kids the way a mental health professional does, any more than we know how to um, direct examine or cross examine clients on the stand.
Yeah, I still maintain that my best friend in a case is a mental health professional on the case,
Yes.
and the mental health professional is a great conduit for the children's feelings and positions and concerns to the court, either through an evaluation or through their own testimony. It can be extremely helpful, and it can identify those problem areas where one parent is bad mouthing the other parent or running down the other parent. And there's an opportunity for education there of how harmful that is to the children. And I think a lot of parents, they're so angry, they're upset. They really don't realize that. I don't think it's
Right.
intentional. They're not trying
Right.
to hurt children, but they don't realize the effect of their behavior and their speech on a child.
Right. Right. They really don't. They don't realize the damage they're doing in the moment. Because, like you said, they're so angry and bitter and resentful and maybe feel betrayed or whatever they're feeling. But it's intense. And they aren't thinking about the fact that that child's sitting right there and they're being harmed by what they're hearing. And they just don't realize it. To your point about mental health professionals being the great asset in your mind or your best friend, as you put it, but I think it's a great asset to the court. There is a trend. We've talked about this before, but I feel it's worth bringing up again. There's a trend, at least in Colorado, but I believe it's nationwide, where I'm sorry, where mental health professionals don't want to get on a case if it's court involved and they do not want to testify. And they'll even have that in their paperwork. And I don't know if I shared this on this show or even with you separately, George, but I was in a hearing recently where this judge repeatedly thanked me for being there and went on, elaborated about that. Not just thank you for being here, but the court really appreciates your willingness to assist the court in figuring out what's best for these kids. She really made a point like three or four times. She thanked me and, as I said, elaborated on the importance of that. And I knew exactly why she was doing that because so many mental health professionals don't want to go to court. And I get that. We get beat up there, but still, it's our job. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we're doing the court a great disservice to take a case if we won't relay that information then to the court. We're not helping the kids if we're not willing to relay that information to the court. What's your thought?
Well, I think it's like being in school. You have to defend your thesis that you
Hmm.
put forward in your report, and that is, I think, a favorable process where the mental health professional can come in and explain and elaborate their findings, their recommendations. That's an invaluable part of the process.
Hmm.
In and so if parents can accept that there's a more less destructive or more constructive track to conflict resolve than litigation, hopefully it mitigates their anger somewhat. That's sometimes the best we can hope for. But also, it's great to have a mental health professional on the case because if my client doesn't like the outcome, I can blame the mental health professional.
Well, and also one of the valuable things about having someone like us on the case, us being mental health professionals, is I can often say the exact same thing to a parent that the other parent says, and they will receive it completely differently coming from me than that other parent. They don't get defensive. It's not the other parent saying it, it's me, and I'm neutral. And so they will often receive what I say just fine, even though the other parent has said it to them before and they resisted, objected, disagreed, whatever. And so there's that value right there of just being neutral.
Well, I think if they understand that the mental health professional, above all else, is an advocate for the child.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so they're going to receive, I think, information from you in that context that
Hmm.
Dr. Marlene is telling me what's best for my child, even though I'm so angry I can't see it. so,
Right, right.
so yeah, I can see that readily that they would accept some educational advisement from you much more willingly than they would from their ex criticizing them.
Yes, yes. And that's a good segue to talking about things parents can do or say to their children, as well as to other people where their children can hear it. But parents don't think about these things, and there's some simple things parents can do. For example, if you see a trait about your child that most likely came from the other parent, they're good in math, they're good working with their hands, they're creative or artistic or whatever it may be. And you know that that is like their other parent. If a parent can say to their kids, you are artistic just like your mom, you are good in math just like your dad, that is powerful. It is powerful because then the kids feel like you don't hate their other parent. And parents really can't do that enough. Usually, what the kids hear from each parent about the other is negative stuff. And if you can say something positive to your child, and it doesn't have to be about them, it doesn't have to be you're good in that just like your other parent, but just say something positive about the other parent. Oh, I miss your dad being here. He was always good at fixing things. Things, but things like that, or I miss your mom's cooking. She's just the best cook. That's powerful to your kids. And as I said, it doesn't make them feel like you hate each other. So I don't know, George, if you ever have the opportunity to encourage the parents you work with to say positive things to the kids about the other parent. But my thought is that can be valuable and powerful, powerful.
I think it's asking a lot, I guess, for the attorney to ask the
Yeah,
client to do that.
yeah, yeah,
That's another example of one of those things where coming from you, it's very acceptable and received
yeah.
very differently from uh, coming from even the attorney. I
Yes.
think you have a unique position to do that and to encourage that, whereas we don't, and we get
Right.
whose side are you on and things like that. I mean, the parties are so vulnerable, and so their emotions are so near the surface. We have to be very careful to always keep their trust and
Mhm.
make sure that they understand that as the client, they have the right to dictate, if you will, the goals for the representation. And if they
Mhm.
choose to discard advisement about an alternative means to conflict resolve, that's okay. They have that right, and we
Mhm.
have to respect that. It's unfortunate, but the intensity of anger and feelings sometimes, uh, I have to admit, uh, I just can't penetrate it sometimes.
Yes. Well, and you make a good point, and I totally agree with what you're saying. I said a few minutes ago, I'm a neutral. You're not. You're actually not. So it's not the attorney's job. I just didn't know if that ever came out in discussions between attorneys and their client. And I'm sure it depends on the client. I'm sure there's people who you can say those kinds of things to, and others that you absolutely can't. You'll lose a client or whatever. But no, your job is to be on their side and be their advocate. And mine is not. And this goes back to a mental health professional being your best friend on a case, because you can see the need for them to view the client to view things differently, that you're not the right one to tell them.
Well, and I wish clients would understand that what we are doing and how they are behaving around their children will have impact years into the future. And
Yes.
so my ability to stretch that vision of the client is very limited. I think you have a great deal more opportunity to educate the client that decisions and behaviors which are engaged in now will have impact far into the future, literally for years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. And as I was saying earlier, that's something that at the time the parents don't think about and don't realize. And often later they do. And then they have regrets. And so we want to live regret free in all of this. And it's hard enough to go through divorce, but to do it and have no regrets is really tough. But when it comes to your children, that's especially where we want these parents to not live with regret.
Well, and it's difficult. I think they see a big piece of their lives, often 10, 15, 20, 25 years of
Hmm.
their lives invested in this relationship. And it's gone down the tubes, if you will, for whatever reason. There's a great sense of loss there
Hmm.
and hurt. And one thing I think parents should understand, and I don't know who tells them this, but the children are grieving also.
Right.
They're grieving the loss of their intact family, mom and dad being home when they get there. The children are grieving also, and
Yes.
they need nurturance in light of that grief. And so
Yes.
a parent's ability to recognize that or set aside their own grief momentarily to nurture their child's grief is
Hmm.
critically important. And I don't know who tells them that exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think it's probably the mental health professional, to be sure. That's part of our job. And I do convey that with parents. I do let them know that your kids are grieving and you've got to let them express what they're feeling. Well, it is time, believe it or not, for another quick break. So we will take that now. But this is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. I've got another good example, George, that I'm going to share with you about things parents can do that will not only not shoot themselves in the foot, but will really nurture and take care of their children. Often our kids, this is something a lot of parents don't think about, but often our kids will come back and tell us stuff that is nothing but gossip about the other parent. And parents have to know how to respond to that. And they also have to be prepared for it. Before we went to break, we're talking about things I tell them. And this is one of the ones I tell them, and I don't know that you can. It's probably not in your role, but I certainly tell parents, be prepared for them to come and tell you something just to get your goat. Things like, you know what mom said about you? You know what grandma called you? And we get caught up in that. And it's very easy for a parent going through divorce to go, what? What did they say? Well, let me tell you something about your grandmother. And this is like the totally wrong way to respond to that. Because now you've let these kids succeed at getting to you, and it gets them attention. And parents have to anticipate that these things are going to happen, and then they have to have a good response. And an excellent response, in my opinion, I'm going to want your opinion, but in my opinion, an excellent response to that is, well, did they want me to hear it? Is it going to make me feel good to hear it? And I think that one is the real key. Is it going to make me feel good to hear it? If not, maybe you shouldn't tell me. And that puts them in check. And it teaches them gossip is not appropriate. And let each parent live their separate life and have their separate household. And don't come back here and tell me everything they said about me. Now, tell me your thoughts about that.
Well, I think not bad mouthing the other parent is probably the most immediate indicator of whether or not a parent has the ability to encourage the sharing of love, affection, and contact, and the ability to place the needs of the child ahead of their own.
Yes.
it is a very immediate indicator. The parent who is bad mouthing the other parent, especially if they do that in court, indicates their lack of ability to encourage that sharing. And
Mhm.
so we want to avoid that in court, of course. And we want
Mhm.
to have the client's testimony indicate that they recognize the need for both parents in a child's life.
Yeah. Yes. And if your kids are coming back and telling you things like that, and you go into court and say, my child told me about such and such, and the only way they could have known that is from my ex, that's not going to go well for the ex.
No, no. And again, we have grandparents and extended family and friends and so forth who are they're well-meaning, but they're often agitators.
Yes. Yes. You know, I've said for years, and I stand by this, people like grandparents, step parents, extended family members fall into one of two distinct categories in the work I do. They are either my greatest asset on the case, and I don't know what I would do without them, or they are the biggest problem. As you said, they are agitators and they stir up conflict and they keep it going and they're full of negativity. And that is poison. I call that poison to the children. It's poison to them. They don't need to hear that.
No, and it's I don't know how parents perceive that they're doing good by bad mouthing the other parent. What is
Mhm.
going on in their mind to cause them to do that? I don't know, other than hurt and anger and so forth.
Right.
But uh, they it's just imperative that they get beyond that, at least as to their children. Let's fight about money if you want to, but if you want
Right.
to, if you're determined to fight, let's fight about finances. But let's try to avoid fighting about the children and embroiling the children, recruiting the children. Those types of behaviors are inappropriate.
Yes. Yes. And often I am able to get, and I'm sure this applies to you too, we're able to get the parents to see that. But then, like we were talking, you've got these grandparents who are angry because their son or daughter has been hurt. And now they lash out. And, you know, I tell parents, I'm sure this isn't a part of your role, but I tell parents, you're responsible for what other people around you say to your kids. You need to put that in check because some parents are all too happy to let other people do
Yes.
their dirty work. And it's not appropriate, and it's still going to come back on that parent. I don't know what you think, but my experience has been the judges will hold that against the parent, even though it wasn't the parent, because they expect you to manage that in your household.
Right, to muzzle your friends,
Yes,
basically.
yes. And that's a good way of putting it because that really is what it boils down to. Is muzzling your friends, your family members, your neighbors, your coworkers, whoever you expose your children to, and especially a new significant other. Talk about pot stirrers. I have seen many times the two parents are getting along fine until one of them gets a new significant other, and to be honest, often it's not the other parent who's just jealous or whatever. It's that new significant other who just stirs the pot and they just want to keep stuff going. And so, you know, again, they fall into that category of you can be an asset on this case and in this situation, or you can be nothing but trouble.
Yeah, I don't get the opportunity to counsel typically with the significant other, or I have to be very, very careful
Oh,
about that
yes.
because the client is convinced that their new significant other is 100% on their side. And
Right.
that's fine, except if unless they're a lawyer or a mental health professional, a family law attorney, that significant other is not necessarily going to understand the nuances of their behavior and the impact of their behavior. And they may not even care about it as long as they feel they're being supportive of their new love interest. Then they don't really care about it. They don't realize it. We have to tell them again, you have to muzzle your significant other to some extent.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Because they want to, like you said, advocate for their newfound love with their children. And that's great as long as you aren't bashing the other parent. But if you're bashing the other parent to do it, saying things like, your mother just doesn't want you to spend much time with your dad, especially now that I'm here, and things like that, totally inappropriate. And I'll tell you, George, you don't get to see this, but I will assure you and the parents out there, the kids will resent that. That is not okay with the kids. They don't overlook that and just ignore it or accept it, or no, they resent that, and they will resent a new significant other faster than anything else if they're coming in trying to bash the other parent.
Yeah, I remember just an interesting, maybe it's interesting to me anyway, in my life after I emancipated, I did not have a good step parent relationship.
Yeah.
And at one point, I took the opportunity to say, I have a mother and you're not it.
Yeah.
And so those things reach way out into the future. And we're sowing seeds for relationships and so forth in the midst of that turmoil of the divorce case. And so
Yes.
we want to try to rise above that and invest in things that are going to pay back for years to come.
Right. Right. I mean, there is a good way and a bad way to handle this. And that's why we tried to point out last week, here are the things not to do. And hopefully, we're providing some tools this week of things that you can do and that you should do, and that take care of your kids. The things that I'm talking about here, take care of your kids. This isn't about you or the other parent or your new significant other. This is about the kids, and we really have to learn how to take care of them.
That's true. And then I think with some divorce recovery work and so forth, maybe
Yes.
some counseling and therapy, then the parents learn to take care of themselves, or they're taken care of in the therapy process. And it frees them up to focus on taking care of their children.
Yes. And that would be my takeaway today is get the help you need. Resources are out there. Get the help you need. Simple
Mhm.
things like having a new step parent. Say to the kids, I'm not trying to replace your mother or your father. Simple things like that. But they've got to have help because we know all those things and they don't.
Right, right. And I think that's critical. And the person who is willing to acknowledge that is far and ahead away of the person who is just so entrenched in their own anger, they're in denial about all of that.
That is right. That is right. That's a mic drop because it's time to go. But we'll see you all next week. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you've been watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll see you next week.
Tune in to The High Road with host Dr. Marlene and gain insight into how to rise above tough circumstances and learn the skills that will help you take the high road in your life, no matter what challenges might come your way, on the next episode of The High Road.